Take a breather, refresh, relax, and join us here on the Rivalry Cooldown, where we bring you esports from the experts. Now, on this episode, of course, we have Nahaz back with us, and we spend a lot of time telling you what players want, but we thought maybe it'd be better to have an actual player, so we have Zfreek, Zach, joining us as well. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Good to be here.
Okay, so the obvious thing, we haven't had a cooldown since before TI, so we're going to rail on the new DPC and everything about Valve soon. But let's talk a little bit about TI. We just had repeat champions.
Yeah,
what?
I mean, it was an amazing event. I think the story that stands out most for me was, so last year, right before TI8, Zach's brother and I were out to dinner the night before the group stage games started, and we ran into OG, and I knew several of those guys, and I just kind of, offered to buy them a drink, which they declined, and said, hey guys, how good do you think you're going to be? Because you're one of the biggest wildcard teams in the tournament for me. And they all kind of looked at me, and Anna was the one who said, I guess we'll tell you tomorrow. That team, they had some confidence, but at the beginning of that event, they did not really know, I think, how good they were going to be. This year, right before the group, literally 10 minutes before the group stage games, I was eating breakfast, and I run into Seb, and he is sprinting for the elevator. So he's going up to the team room, and I kind of yelled, good luck. And he stops, turns around, and goes, we're going to be really good. And then takes off. And I was like, all right. And the big difference, of course, is it was pretty obviously Secret looked good at the beginning of the group stages, but it pretty much from the beginning of the tournament, OG looked like the best team. And that was a lot of people, because of the storied history now and the repeat champs, saying, oh, they were the best team in Dota for 2 years now. I think you replay TI8 10 times and OG wins at most 2 and probably 1, which happened. I think you replay TI9 10 times and OG probably wins 6. So there you go.
Yeah, I can agree with that. They were definitely a lot stronger at TI9 than TI8. TI8 had a lot more, close up and down games.
Comebacks.
Well, when it's OG, it's not as much comebacks a lot of the time. They're just there's so many games, especially at TI9, not really TI8, where they just hit their timing and play the game, and the other team loses. Teams finally caught on later at TI9, and you could see them all slowing down the pace and all trying to hit their timings together, but OG was just way ahead of everyone on it.
Right.
So I know OG at TI8 played all of the almost greedy late game, lose the lanes, win the game type thing, right? That was the TI8 strat? I'm
I think
fuzzy
it was,
on here.
Here's the thing about OG is that they're just able to make these amazing adjustments on the fly, and they're able to sort of figure things out as the tournament goes on. And that was something, I think it made it into True Sight, but it was definitely something I've talked to Seb about. He's like, the ultimate irony about TIA is that people talked about us as being this really fast team, but it's the late game that won us the tournament in the last couple of series, especially. And this year it was very much, Zach's talked about timing, and every year at TI, to me, what makes the event so much more enjoyable is the teams, they're playing under a lot of pressure, but they still get better, at least the good teams. And basically what happened is, everybody figured out that OG was just exploiting these ridiculous timings. And OG saw people doing that, and they were like, oh, haha, that's great. We're just gonna draft a lineup that hits its timing 4 minutes earlier than yours. And you're just dead. You just lost your base. Great, you hit your timing now, you're 2 racks down.
And so, OG is not the only storyline that we're seeing, right? We had alliances, very, very unfortunate.
Sure, and I'm so...
We had Secrets domination, and then, once again, not taking home another TI title for Puppy.
Oh, well, Kuro's got some kryptonite in his pocket, apparently.
Yeah, well, he knocked himself out, too. I don't know, but there's some interesting ones.
Look, that final, Liquid played great at that tournament. 2 minutes after the grand finals ended, I tweeted, I tweeted, I think Liquid's going to win TI10, and I'll stand by that. Especially if, the Reddit conspiracy theory, right, is Sumail joining Liquid, which obviously, is probably so much out there. But I really think that we staying or not, that 4-player core that they have is just incredible.
And say they're not Liquid anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's a big thing that I want to talk about today, because I'm deeply apprehensive about some of the ways that I see the role of orgs going, but we'll get to that.
I mean, we can jump into that now if you want. I'm not sure. I mean, I kind of like to know a little bit about what TI was. So Zach and I were at Jungle Jam, and we started to watch TI remotely, which was a different experience for sure. I mean, You've been at previous TIs, and this one was in China. We talked about what we were going to expect from the crowd, the broadcast was going to be like. I would sort of like to go into that a little bit. I don't know if that was interesting at all.
Absolutely. The funny thing about TI is that it's so intense every year that you're kind of in this bubble, and it doesn't matter as much as you think it was where it is. Everybody's just so focused on the games and so focused on then what's the land. The minute you're out, it's like, what am I doing next year? What's the landscape going to look like? And it's so crazy that little things like, the fact that we're in Shanghai instead of Seattle. I mean, obviously you notice them when people's VPN craps out, or when you have trouble getting. I mean, being a vegetarian there is like this horrible nightmare. Not that I would know, but poor Bulba, I think, lost 10 pounds. But other than that, it doesn't matter as much, because TI is just so. It's this full body and soul experience.
Yep. It's definitely something else for me there at the event. Even watching at home, you get a lot more like the player interaction at TI than you do at other events. You have like winners and losers interviews. People get emotional. It's like this whole experience. That's why Jungle Jam was actually kind of weird, because we didn't watch any of that.
That's true. Yeah, we did miss out on pretty much the main broadcast because we did our own thing. Which is interesting. Okay, but I do have a question. Loser interviews are very controversial.
Yeah, and I don't think they should be. I think we're already very nice about them. When you the cruelest loser interviews in all of broadcasting are college basketball, because they're not even getting paid, and the NCAA mandates that those kids. Most of them, and they always get the seniors who've just played their last game at that school, who've played with their friends for the last time, who are never going to be coached by this guy again, and they have to get to go up to a table and answer questions from freaking random media, a room full of random media, and it's like, that is shit. Okay, our loser interviews, we basically never force people. Yes, obviously, Valve's Valve, and Valve has a lot of leverage. But I never feel like somebody's there with a gun to their head. I don't think they should be as controversial. I mean, a lot of the controversy had to do with, there was a recent one from Owl that was really, really good with Soul Dynasty and was really kind of tear-jerking. And there are just a lot of esports fans that aren't sports fans and that are not used to that level of emotion on screen. And so, yeah, they're like, oh, we're being mean to the players. No, we're not. Part of the fan experience is riding that roller coaster with your team, and saying that. Guys, I got a newsflash for you. Okay, being a professional fucking player is hard. It's like, Zach, come on, man, it's hard, and yeah, you're getting. I think a lot of fans, they're getting a window into what some of these professional players go through. And it makes them sort of uncomfortable, because they're like, oh, it's just a video game. No.
Well, yeah, and then that's why it's controversial. All right, Zach, what would be the worst question to get asked in a loser interview?
In a loser interview?
Yes.
I have no idea.
Okay, so if I went to a player...
You would know.
There are dumb ones, You get asked, like, would you have done better with this player you're no longer playing with? It's like, there's always dumb questions. But
okay. What about asking why do you think you lost?
Oh God, that one's pretty bad.
Yeah?
I mean, questions like that, you kind of just get around. You just say something like, I'm not sure. Like, I need to watch the replay,
Yeah.
But you know why, right?
Yeah, but you're also, I always feel like the interviewer is kind of setting you up to fail with that question, because like, what are you going to say? Honestly, the best answer to that, and the guys that I most respect, are the guys that are like, yeah, we lost because I played bad. Because you know what? It sucks, but you do make mistakes. You know, I thought, like, you brought up Alliance earlier.
Yeah.
I thought that's about as difficult a situation, you know, as I've seen, and I thought they handled that wonderfully as individuals and as an org, and it's part of why I will root for those guys for however long they're playing Dota.
Alliance is well put together, just in general. What?
Did they do a loser interview after that game?
Yes.
I actually didn't see it.
Yeah, no, Aiden was like, yeah, you know, funny story, because there was some speculation going on about that might have happened. There were a couple of talent that were pretty sure that they saw that misclick, and Aiden was like, in the interview, he's like really open about it. He's like, yeah, funny story. And, you know, and it was,
and then they pulled the audio from the booth.
Yes, and look, it's obviously it's got to be devastating for him, but you know, that's massive points for Grace under pressure, man, and massive points to a man. Everybody on that team that they asked about it, they're like, look, you know, we worked really hard, and it sucks to lose, but we came here as a team, we're leaving as a team.
And you didn't come last in groups, so you made like, what, 8 times the money?
Yeah,
that's true.
A whole 1%, right?
Insane. Okay, I think this is a good segue into talking about what it takes to be a good team and a well-run team, because Alliance is a great example of a well-run team that took a long time to get their feet off the ground, but they do a lot of content with their players. The org puts in a lot of work to build player brands, and Insania is a very intelligent person who I think would always give a great exit interview. But I think the atmosphere of Alliance has trained all of them to be graceful when they make a mistake, you know, to be successful on camera. And we've got Liquid, ex-Liquid, and Dendy both talking about player-run orgs, which means we need to start having serious conversations about what it takes to actually be a good org.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been, and again, I want to let Zach talk, because people have heard my views on a lot of these things, but this is one I'll do my little mini rant on and get out of the way. Look, so a kind of an open secret. This has been in the works for a while, I think, but TI did nothing but sort of reinforce a lot of people's desire for this. A lot of the top organizations, Liquid being one, Dendy being another, and there will more than likely be at least one or two more before the dust settles. A lot of people are looking at player-run orgs and getting away from, you know, the big esports brands in an effort to keep more of the resources inside the scene and keep more resources in the hands of the players. And I think, again, we talked a lot on the last podcast, you know, go give that a listen, about the role that orgs play in terms of sustainability. Okay. Orgs, one of the functions of orgs is the two most important functions. One is simply as an income smoother, because as an esports player, your earnings are very chunky. You win a lot of prize money all at once, and then you don't win any more prize money for a long period of time. And these are young people that we're talking about with large sums of money. Some of them are going to save it well, and some of them are not. And it is in everybody's best interest. You know, I've railed and railed. I'll say it one more time. People do these comparisons. They look at esportsearnings.com, and they do these comparisons across esports, and they don't realize those do not include salaries. In Dota, we have a serious problem with salaries. Most player compensation is still coming from prize pools, and those prize pools are incredibly skewed toward the top handful of teams. And my big worry with this move toward player-run orgs is that, hey, if you're Kuro, you're in great position to go out and get some funding and get independent people to invest with you and get resources and be able to create your own infrastructure and call the shots and keep more of the resources in house. And that's and you got a goddamn good head on your shoulders, and you're going to be able to handle that.
You also have security of winning several tournaments, placing pretty well to kind of hold you out while you get that set up.
You're capitalized, right? You got a lot of cash in the kitty to help facilitate that. I think a lot of other people that are thinking about starting their own organizations are in for a pretty rude awakening in terms of, go read NP, go read Forward Gaming, okay? Money does not fall out of the sky. And the things that sponsors pay for, brand activations, live streaming hours, individual appearances and team appearances, playing Dota is a full-time job, man. Players don't have time to fucking take care of that themselves.
Yeah, to schedule it all, to even social media promotions and everything like that.
We can't run our own social media, let's be honest.
A lot of people should not be allowed to touch their own social media. It's not without significant PR training.
So, like, what are we doing here? At best we're reinventing the wheel, and I think you're always going to have the organizations like Secret. Again, Secret was not the layup that a lot of people think. There was a lot of money poured into that organization at the beginning, before they really took off.
And we saw plenty of drama with it. There's been a couple Eternal Envy blogs, so it didn't go so well.
I think the thing that most upset me about TI was, obviously as talent we're not invited to the player meeting, but the pretty much the summary I got out of the player meeting was, the org question gets asked every year, and it looked like in the past couple of years that there were signs that Valve were becoming more receptive to the role of orgs. But the question was asked again this year, and I have it from several people that the response was basically, look, our position is that the value ultimately comes from the players, and so we see no reason to facilitate orgs in the scene. And that's paraphrasing. And again,
BPC points are still attached to orgs?
Yeah.
So that's another thing we can talk about. I don't get that either. But my main point is, yes, all value does ultimately come from players, but I think people underestimate the number of different things that have to be done so that all that value gets realized. And go talk to somebody like Scott Smith running the Counter-Strike players or advising the Counter-Strike Players Association. He will be the first to tell you he tells players no more often than yes. And I think there are a lot of people right now that have this rosy picture about, orgs are just taking money from us, and I don't see it. I really don't see it.
And the recent Vega issues certainly aren't putting orgs in a good light either. Of course.
Look, they're always going to be. That's.
I think players just generally, they don't think about all the extra shit that the org does for them. They just ignore it. They try and be uninvolved in it. They don't want to do it when they're asked, and then they just want to play Dota.
Right.
So they don't respect the amount of effort that actually goes into properly maintaining a brand.
Well, you were with Cole for 5 years, right?
And saw a big transformation.
Yeah. So what does Cole do? What did they do for you? What did they want from you? Right? What were you saying no to that they were like, no, you need to do this?
They actually didn't ask that much of us in terms of content creation. We did POV for a while. We did occasionally we did videos where we just go and do an activity and it just gets recorded. They helped with social media assets, stream assets. They can offer bonuses for streaming, shit like that. But
again, incentives. That's a big part of what orgs do is incentivize players to develop their brands. And
I mean, even just shit I lived in an apartment that I didn't have to deal with the bills. And
across the street from the Cowboys cafeteria, right? Or that's kind of the thing. The best thing an org can do is just put you in a position where your job is to play Dota, and that's what you focus your time and your energy on, right?
And so what are these? What I'm curious about is these player-run orgs. Are they going to try and be proper orgs, kind of like, you know, what Team NP attempted, where they get sponsors?
To go like back to the original thing we were talking about.
Okay.
With Liquid going to be a player-run org, Dendy starting his own org. I think they could work. Like Alan was saying earlier, like if Kuro just like finds people to help him and essentially builds an org from the ground up, and then the Dota team's just still a Dota team and he doesn't have to be that involved, it could just work. I mean, like he said, it's like reinventing the wheel because you're just making your own org now. But, you know, maybe he wants to stop playing in 2 years and go run the org.
So, no, I mean, look at Loda, right?
Yeah.
And the role that he's, you know, it part of it is you're looking at I've done well, I've made some money during my playing career. You know, I don't necessarily want to go buy stocks, and I'm going to take these assets and I'm going to put them into an org so that in a couple of years I have some stability. I can still be involved, maybe as a coach, maybe as a manager, or not, or I can sell off that equity.
Yeah. Or, you know, PPD tried that. He hated it, from what I hear. So
look,
I think it was pretty optically clear that he hated it.
Oh, I don't. Peter is not secretive about it, and it's not. You know, Peter's not secretive about it.
Yeah. Well, he got rid of some of the original EG fighting games or I can't remember who it was, but it was like...
He dropped StarCraft, I think. He just straight up dropped StarCraft.
He's just like, I don't feel like dealing with this. Goodbye. And like they were some of the pillars of what EG was formed on. Right. And it was kind of moves like that made you think, okay, he clearly only cares about Dota. And, you know, this is obviously not what he signed up for. So it'd be interesting.
But look, this is what a lot of, again, you know... This is what a lot of the conversation comes back to, like we talked about last time. It's simple math. This is a business. And if you want to go create your own small business, that's great. What is the number one thing you need to go and create your own small business? You need a pile of freaking cash.
And to give up your life. Yeah.
And for most of us, that means somebody's got to lend it to us. Or we are staking a large portion of our personal savings on a project like this that is not guaranteed to succeed. So that's what I'm saying.
Likely to not succeed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, it's 75% of small businesses in the U.S. fail within the first year, and that's conservative. So,
well, and I don't think people realize, we talked about, you know, with Secret, they've had issues. I also don't know if people realize how much Matt does for Secret.
Oh.
You know, it's not, I'm sure Puppy is involved. Yes, Puppy's a smart guy. But Matt is an insane asset, and there's not a lot of people like him. So the amount of work that he has done to make that org an org is, I think that's much more significant of a factor.
I think Matt is one of the best advocates I have seen certainly in the Dota 2 scene, and really anywhere in esports. He is very, very good at advocating for his players and his organization. He has an understanding of the way a lot of things work, both on the business side and on the coding side, on the technical side. And so he's in very good position to be an advocate. But that's what I think a lot of people don't understand, is that this is an adversarial system. And we've talked all along about the way an adversarial system works is that all parties need to be represented by somebody qualified, by somebody that knows the rule of the system, be that a lawyer, an agent, whatever. Okay. And that's what I worry about with a lot of these orgs, is there's a lot of you want to start an org, that's starting a business. And there is a lot of red tape. There's a lot of bureaucracy.
And you're dealing with your own visas now.
Well, no.
You know what? I just want to say visas are insane. Oh. And I have seen the amount of paperwork that, you know, Fantasy went through getting us visas this year, when we had people from 4 different countries and me. And it is, I mean, America's not that hard for most places, but you know, at least one person on the team to everywhere we went this year had like a 40-page document.
Yep. And it's not getting any easier. That's the scary part about it. You look at the worldwide political environment right now. This is not going away.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious. I'm sure that weighs into Valve's decision making when they determine where tournaments are being held.
Do you think it does?
I think it does.
I'm not sure
It's not like they're going to let another tournament happen in the Philippines. Not with a guy who's killing people who have drugs in their system.
Well, but again, you look at Galaxy Bat. How close were we?
Yes. Yeah. Also,
there's not a whole lot of planning going on here.
I didn't make it to that event, so.
I actually think that publicly the Galaxy Battles reasons had to do with the drug testing and everything, but I think that there were a lot of underlying reasons that we won't necessarily get into, but I think there's a lot of issues there. But I still wonder if that's a factor in determining whether or not to give a bid, like a tournament organizer, a major. Maybe for a minor, they're like, but maybe for a major they're thinking about it, or you think there's just nothing?
That's part of the problem, is that nobody really knows what they're thinking about. And that's Valve, again, we've talked about this a million times. They play their cards close to the vest, and that's always been their style. But it's not just the opacity of it all, it's the timing. I mean, we're finding out about these tournaments. Locations are being announced.
We don't know the dates of the open qualifier yet.
Right.
Well, the dates of the open would be before the main ones. I feel like that's kind of obvious.
Sometimes they're like they end 4 days before for your region, and sometimes they end like 2 weeks before for your region.
Let's not forget that last year open qualifiers overlapped with the major.
Yeah.
There were players
you could not make a change
last year that were getting kicked
and couldn't play.
They were getting kicked, and they're like, "Well, guess I'm not playing the next major then, unless I somehow convince another team to kick somebody." Which, by the way, you can still do this. Yeah. That's still a thing.
Yes.
And it's still going to be a thing.
So,
really, this was built. Does anybody think that saying, "Oh, you're going to be penalized 20% of the DPC points you earn if you kick somebody that you qualified with"? Does anybody think that that's going to be a deterrent?
No.
Okay.
I mean, what was it last year to qualify for TI? It was some minuscule amount of points.
Yeah,
because Secret and VP
people
and Liquid had all the points.
People didn't realize until the very end that, exactly what happened the previous year was going to happen again, that there are these huge amount of dead points, that you're going to have the top 5 or 6 teams have thousands more points that they needed to qualify. And so, and part of it, there are some things about that that's nice, that mean that these, last tournaments of the year are really going to matter. And you're going to have a lot of drama, like these Alliance Gambit series at Epicenter that was amazing.
I mean, but that mattered halfway through the tournament, and then the grand finals didn't matter.
But here's the problem. When you're talking about all this, the big carrot that was supposed to fix the Tier 2 scene is, we're going to give you DPC points now for qualifiers, and we're going to invite people to qualifiers based on DPC points. Guys, you may very well at the end of the season end up seeing TI spots decided on those 10. What I'm saying, the line between 12th and 13th place is razor thin. And that's why for the life of me, there are at least half a dozen ways that I could write down to fix those issues, and just handing out more DPC points for qualifiers. You can't eat DPC points. What?
I think it was Moon that tweeted recently, "I really hope Costco or my landlord accept DPC points this year."
In what universe is that going to help the Tier 2 scene? I just don't see it.
I mean, did you really see that? I thought that was just a demystifying the process of participants and qualifiers. I didn't think that was something that was supposed to really help Tier 2.
Yeah, it's the same. Honestly, it is trying to avoid. It's the same reason that we went to 0 direct invites. Everybody had to play qualifiers because there was drama the year before about, oh, which teams are getting direct invites to majors. Oh, these tournament organizers are making these decisions and blah 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 blah. Okay, so we'll have everybody play qualifiers. Oh, now last year the drama was which teams were being invited to the closed regional qualifiers. So we're going to remove another degree of drama. But
didn't they essentially go from absolutely no information on who's invited, other than you can kind of assume the top 3 from the previous event, to no one is invited?
Yes.
Yep.
And this is the thing. This is the thing that I've complained about with Valve for years and years and years, is you just get this massive pendulum effect.
Yeah.
We go from, we're over here at the far left end of the spectrum. I guess that's your right. And everybody says, oh, no, that's bad. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
There's no interior.
I mean, it's happening in an MMR right now even.
Yeah.
It's actually great. I've gone from, I was playing Team Q like 3 years ago. And then I finally hit a team rating where I could get into solo queue games. And it took 3 days for people to complain on Twitter, and they implemented the strict solo matchmaking button. And since then, I have not been able to even get a Team Q MMR until they just went and removed Team Q MMR. But they also left the button in for a while, so you couldn't even play as 2 or 3 people. And now they're just removing it entirely. And I have no idea what they're trying to do. But you can't solo queue.
Well, I mean,
you can't play as less than 5.
Maybe they're trying to force the creation of in-house leagues again as support for the Tier 2 system, and they're doing it by horribly messing up matchmaking, so you guys have no choice but to go back to face it. This is my theory.
Maybe.
I wouldn't put it past them. I know it's a dumb theory. But
I wouldn't hate them for making their own internal in-house league system. That'd be great.
Valve.
How about
that
what
worked
we've
out well.
been asking for 3 or 4 years now, and that's make it possible to organize and administrate in-house leagues through the client.
Yeah.
Which I thought Battle Cup was honestly a testing ground for. I assumed that they did that programming and everything so they could test tournaments. Yeah. And then they haven't opened up the system at all.
Yep.
They've just left it there and
don't fix the bugs.
Yeah, I know. Shocker. What we know about Valve is, they're all about fixing the bugs and not about the new big ideas.
No, they're pretty good about fixing bugs sometimes. Like twice a year, you get bug fixes.
Gameplay they focus
on. They're really good about it when they're at a big tournament and you got big players that are reporting them to,
or taking advantage of them.
Oh, I still remember one. It was TI5. It had been on Reddit like 3 times, but no one was using it yet. You went to place a ward in your base, and then you shift.
Oh shit! I remember that.
Yeah, you gave a move command in the fountain, shift queued, place the ward, move the ward from your inventory to your backpack or your stash, and then when you went to place the ward, because you still had the command, you created the item ward in the 0-0 center of the map, which was perfectly on dire enemy high ground. So I showed it to Eric Johnson because can I use this? He's like, no. And that got fixed pretty quickly after that. But it's been on Reddit like 3 times.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the thing. Valve as a company, it's no secret that the Dota 2 team is a bit smaller than it was. And that's fine. I mean, I get it. There are other internal priorities, but yeah, what was weird to me about the whole matchmaking thing is that they chose to implement this during TI season, which I guess on the one hand, that is when you have the largest active player base. And so things like, the sparsity problems from role queuing are a little bit less maybe, but it also is going to create absolute havoc with the very highest MMRs.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, and Mid One couldn't find solo queue games when he was in China. He's tweeting at Valve and he's asking people from Valve. He's like, this is how I practice. what am I supposed to do, guys?
You have to 5-man queue if you're above
Right.
8,000 MMR. You cannot play a core role right now in Dota 2. It's like, maybe if you're lucky, pretty much you go and there's like 4 groups of people 5-man queuing, and then at some point they all break down and you get 1 or 2 solo queue games, and then a couple people leave and you don't play anymore. That's what it looks like right now, is everyone's just sitting in queue simulators.
It seems really strange because obviously everything in Dota is balanced around the pro scene. It is dedicated to the pro scene, dedicated to really high MMR. You know, we don't, other companies look at new player retention and tutorials and things that keep the newer player. And everything about Dota is about the experienced high level player.
Well, wait. No,
I know what you're going to say. There have been quality of life changes that have helped the newer player. Where I was going with this is it surprises me.
I want to talk about the balance part.
Yeah,
I know. That's what I understand. What surprises me is that when they're implementing the queue system or making changes, that they don't do flexibility to the very small percentage of high MMR people queuing. It surprises me that they don't have some kind of additional consideration taken in for the very small number of players that are the players that they cater to.
That's very difficult to do, though, because it's again, it is an algorithm, and the core design problem is to find a formula that works as well at 8,000 ELO or MMR as it does at 3,000.
But I don't see why they have to.
Scale problem, right? Well, no.
I think you're saying just have different algorithms.
Yeah, I'm saying you have a different algorithm based on player population queuing at the time. So you don't have to even do an MMR cutoff. You could just have if population is.
Let me just say, look, I don't want to get into the technical. That is harder than you think. And a big purpose, and I have it directly. I mean, they wrote as much as the blog, right? A big purpose of this grand MMR experiment is as an experiment let's gather some data and let's see what works and what doesn't work. And obviously, you know, it was pretty apparent within the first 2 weeks that there were going to be problems with this. You know, we're expecting some changes, and we hoped that they were going to be changed a little faster. But it is what it is. And I think, again, you need to distinguish when you talked about Dota. Maybe this is what one thing Zach was getting into. When you talk about Dota, Dota is balanced from a gameplay balance perspective, the power level of various heroes, items, whatever. It's balanced from the top down. And that has been highly, highly successful over the years. Despite it's not perfect, but as a paradigm, it's been great.
I have I was watching Rainbow Six, like
like
a year and a half ago now or something, and their balance guy came on the stream and essentially talked about why they balance from the top down. And it's like, in that, it's like I can't remember what their highest rank is. It's something above diamond, something like that. But essentially, if diamond players start abusing something, occasionally they're going to come into contact with platinum players. The platinum players are going to start losing to it, and then they're going to start abusing it. And the platinum players are going to start playing gold players, and they're going to start abusing it.
Well, and then it ends up on Reddit, and it's all over.
And then it ends up on So it's just a tiered, like, there's no reason to not balance at the top.
So fun fact, like I know the guy you're talking about, and I've met him a couple occasions. So their dev team is actually huge Dota fans, and when they were making the game, when they were making Rainbow Six Siege, they did not know that Overwatch was going to be a thing. They had no idea that Blizzard was about to come out with this class-based MMO hybrid, and one of their core concepts for Rainbow Six was actually a hybrid of MMOs and FPS. Where
that's why I really like Rainbow Six.
It's like I would love to be able to play that game. I can't aim worth shit. But it is from a design perspective, it is an amazing game. And I know that dev team. That dev team is sick. Like they have some insanely bright people. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, you were saying, so the distinction between balancing top-down and other game. So that's the point I was making, is that they balanced top-down, but it didn't seem like they
balancing in terms of patches and heroes and items is one thing. the design of the experience in terms of the way that you interact with the game, the way that you find matches, the way the MMR system works, advancement outside of between matches, outside of the game, that's where I think it's more, you got to take a look at the two levels a little bit differently. And it is harder than you think to just say, okay, well, we're going to just design another matchmaking system that's applicable at the highest levels, because then, where do you cut it off? At what point does one system end and the other begin? It's not an easy technical problem, even in the pure theory sense.
Doesn't League just have that? I think League is literally, if you're in Challenger, you queue with Challenger.
Yeah, but again,
I mean, that kind of fixes it. Like a little bit. You might have like a player-based issue. I'm not sure.
And here's the thing, right? League's weird as far as a lot of these issues, to the point where I'm not sure that you can use it as a test case. In that League is very static. It's a very static game. It's
way more players too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Exactly.
So I mean, for Dota, you'd have to say what, the top 1,000, right? Because that's immortal.
Yeah.
So will you?
I mean, I've seen an immortal 5,400, so I have no idea.
I don't think
that doesn't make any sense then. Never mind.
But I mean, you could just make another bracket that's just top 1,000. But at that point, you just make an in-house league.
Yeah.
Well, right. That's, again, and that's kind of what a lot of us have been saying for a long time is that you just make it easy. Make it easier to form in-house leagues and manage them through the client, so that people, when they're sitting in that hour-long queue, have the incentive to ping people through the client and say, "Hey guys, let's play an in-house. Let's play a scrim here," right?
Yeah. I mean, at least now we just have a Discord group that's just like, "Hey, someone make a team."
Right.
You. And normally it happens, but it's still, it's like fixing the issue yourself.
Which, I mean, Valve's big on community doing it instead of them.
Yeah,
so.
Except if it's in the Dota 2 client, then there's just no method of having a community whatsoever other than joining a chat channel.
Yeah. No,
right.
if there, so I mean, we all want more built-in systems and functionality. It's also, the other thing that happens is like when everybody was in Shanghai. And all of the players are there, and then, the players who are left behind in NA or EU or whatever, I bet queues were miserable for them because all the high-level players are gone.
Everybody that I knew that wasn't at TI was just like, this is hell.
Brax became number 1 in NA, though.
Nice.
He did.
That
He's
was
still number 2, actually.
Well, Brax is
really high up there
good
now.
at Dota.
Yeah.
He is talented. Okay, so we're talking about, we want in-house leagues.
Talk about DPC.
Yeah, I want to talk about the new DPC system, where they definitely changed so many things and really, listened to people from last year.
Let's start positive. Let's give credit where credit's due, because the one change that the players at all levels and the community, I think, were unanimous behind was these qualifiers, minor and major qualifiers, especially qualifiers beginning 48 hours after major finals, are dumb. Those were consolidated. That, by the way, in itself is not a costless thing. There are a lot of casters out there who do still make their living off of online matches, and I would have liked to see a little bit more of a step in terms of, hey, we're going to encourage there to be some online events, but anyway, that's done. So
the other caveat there,
qualifiers.
Yeah, but the other issue there, not only are casters struggling a little bit, you used to have a minor organizer who could run an entire qualifier and list that as broadcast hours for sponsors. And now the major and the minor are splitting up qualifier broadcast hours.
But my understanding of it is that the minor owner owns phase 3.
Yeah, so like
the minor owner actually owns like the finals or whatever. So that's kind of a nice bone to throw. It's still, again, the problem is in terms of stuff that's actually going to fix systemic issues. That's kind of the end of the list.
Yeah,
there's really not another change that I can see that's actually going to fix any of these issues that we've been And that's part of why I was a little apprehensive about this episode. I don't want to sit here and rehash and run back down the list of issues that we've run down in like half a dozen shows now. But the problem is that other than the major amount of qualifiers being consolidated, none of them were addressed.
So I do have a question for Zach, though. I've been very curious about the player side on this one. Formats were all over the place last year. I know Jack complained a lot about it on our episodes with him. And so Valve said, hey, we're going to have tighter control on the formats. And what that meant was...
And by the way, it's all going to be GSL.
Yes, every single tournament is identical.
Well, you mean, this year?
Yes, every single...
Last year, right?
Yeah, it's not like they gave 3 acceptable formats. Or...
That was Valve's solution, was we are going to codify... Majors are going to be the group phase of majors are going to be 4 groups, GSLs. 4 team GSL, and the group phase of minors is going to be 2 groups, 4 team GSL, and it's ridiculous. Like I don't
hate GSL that much.
I
think round robin's better, and there are definitely some tournaments where you're there for like 2 weeks.
Okay.
You don't do anything for half the time you're there, and you're like, why don't we just take the time?
All right. Here's the thing. I would prefer round robin, but in most cases round robin is more played in more games, so I get it. It's not free, okay? And there is no perfect tournament format. I've said that about 1,000 times. At the very least, though, if you're going to marry yourself to this tournament structure, why not just play traditional double elim? GSL is traditional double elim with cross-group restrictions that says if you lose to a team and then you beat the next team and the team that you lost to also loses, you play them again. And it's very frustrating. A lot of teams have said this. It's very frustrating to be eliminated from a major because you lost to best
from the team in your own region.
Exactly. So why not, if we're going to go with this structure, just put a traditional seeded double elim bracket up there, drop the cross-group restrictions so that there are no rematches before the playoff stage. For the life of me, I don't understand.
What would that look like?
It would look like exactly the same as GSL, except the decider matches are played cross-group. The last series in each of take two 4-team GSL groups, play them exactly the same way, and the only difference is that the decider match is played the team switch groups essentially.
So that works for
that
works for the minor too.
That works.
That is literally traditional.
People are going to complain that you got through because you ended up playing like the 2 worst teams somehow.
But
like
people already
do
complain that you got through because you happen to be in the one group where 2 teams suck. It's come on.
I mean, before we even change the format, I'm always more upset about how they do seeding, because it's never like
scheduling.
Well, it's more like some tournaments were okay about seeding, but in general, playing teams from the same region when you're only playing 3 other teams in group stage makes absolutely no sense. There's no reason we shouldn't have, like, Europe was so strong last year. They shouldn't be knocking each other out in groups. Like, if 3 European teams just win their GSL groups, then so be it. But
that's part of the problem, is that we cultivate this attitude in Dota that everybody always knows more than everybody else, right? And so it's like when you talk to these tournament organizers, I'll use Starladder as an example because I love those guys, have a great relationship with them. But when I talk to them about their tournaments, they're like, "Oh, well, we have our own internal rankings," and I'm like, "Get the fuck out of here!" Okay, everybody has their own internal rankings. Everybody's got opinions. They are literally like assholes. Okay, just do it by either do it. I don't necessarily like doing it by DPC points because I think it rewards teams that were good at the beginning of the year and are garbage now. But at the very least, do it by some. Knoxville and I publish 4 different ELO, Glico 1, Glico 2. Pick your favorite. I'll put it up there. I'll get it done. Pick your favorite power ranking. Give me an algorithm. pick your favorite power ranking algorithm. I will publish that algorithm for Dota 2 teams. I'll pay one of the grad students at Georgetown. I'll get you a web app where you can set the parameters and it'll calculate. Like, just make it public. Make that information. I want to know what information is being used to seed teams. That's all I ask.
So my question here, though, is what Zach said. It sucks when you have two teams from the same region in a group. Right. If you seed that way, you could very much end up with 4 European teams in a group.
No, because you do what the NCAA tournament does. And that is you have protected seeding. You have the rule that says that provided you're not moving too many slots up or down, if it is possible to switch 2 teams in the bracket so that 2 teams from the same conference are not seeded to meet before the Sweet 16, before the 3rd round, you switch the 2 teams.
Okay, fair.
I mean, even just like as an org, Cole plays EG at every event in the group stage. I don't know like how often it is, but it's pretty goddamn often. And then like last year, you just have Alliance who goes through the hellscape of Europe, and they're always like sneaking in as the 3rd team or qualifying through the minor. Yeah, and they get into the group stage and they're in fucking like Liquid and Secrets group or something. Yeah. Ridiculous. And just like these teams know them. It's
And then you're scrim partners. You're in the same region. You're scrim partners.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. That like, you have the availability of separating regions, and then you just have events where there's just 3 teams from one region or
it's like, it reminds me a lot of TNC at the Kiev Major, right? TNC looked so they looked like a team that could make a run, and they happened to draw Faceless from their region first round of a single elimination playoff bracket, and it's like GG. That literally Faceless was the only Faceless looked like crap against every other team there. TNC looked like a team that could make a run of the grand finals, but the 2 knew each other too well. That's the kind of thing. And I hate to go back and get back on this horse, guys, but we need a rule book.
But then people would exploit the rules if they were written down.
Yeah, well, that's why. Fine. That's why then
we get new memes. I'm still stuck with rulebook bediz, and like half the scene doesn't even know what that is.
Yeah, I don't have a clue what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Thanks for that. So the other
blast from the past.
There's another I don't know if to call it a change or not change, but for our last minor, we saw 2 teams head to Epicenter, and they removed that. The rules say that the winner from the minor goes to the major, and that's it. So I have mixed feelings about that, right? Because your grand finals of the minor means nothing if both teams go. But why aren't you using essentially an extra LAN qualifier that pits regions against each other to find the actual strongest teams rather than just assigning another major slot to a region without knowing how those teams do internationally?
I mean, there's several issues actually in play here. You talk about, should some number of teams from the previous major, at least the winner, but possibly also the runner-up and even the 3rd place team, should they automatically qualify to the next major? Should there be 2 teams from the minor? You can argue all you want, okay? The worst solution is saying, Valve will decide.
Yeah, because they basically just get to...
Based on what? It's like... This is the problem that I've preached about for so long, is we need to become, if anything, the trend should be toward more transparency.
Yeah.
Okay. And what I see is we are getting more opaque, and that's where all the drama, that's where all the shit comes from.
I don't know. I don't know if you should just have Valve just like, decide where these extra slots to the major go, but like
why?
Because
what?
Okay, no. It shouldn't. Hold on. I'm saying it has to be done before the minor, though. Like even last year, we went to the last minor of the year, and all of the teams that had a chance of like a realistic shot of getting to the major had to arrive in the country and immediately start doing visas. Like actually land and hand someone their passports to do some pseudo shady stuff to get a visa in time for the major.
But look, that is the minor major system.
There's no way to get a visa for both the minor and the major countries for every team at the event. You can't have like 4 teams from the event go.
Well, but I mean, again, that was.
Well, they did spread out the time, so we have a little more time between a tiny bit more time before minors.
How much? Because like 2 weeks is like bare minimum for most places.
Yeah, it's a little. No, so that's not what I think Nahaz was going into there. So
no,
imagine if you had 2 teams from every region qualifying. That leaves 4 extra spots at the major. So if you have the previous grand finalists and 2 people from the minor, that gives you your 4 teams. Because with Valve arbitrarily saying, oh, Europe looks stronger, they get an extra slot. Like,
like I said, by the way,
I like taking it from the previous major. I just think taking more from the minor is like, that's just not a thing.
I think 2 from the minor is okay, especially toward the end of I think 2 from the minor was very good. At Star Ladder.
I actually like 2 from the minor, but more than that is...
No, we're just saying 2.
Because here's the thing, right? What Nessa was saying, and I strongly agree with, is the minor is your LAN qualifier. Why in the world are you saying, oh, we're going to arbitrarily give Europe 1 more slot or 2 more slots? Have them earn it.
Yeah.
I mean, have them earn it at the minor. If the 2 best teams at the minor happen to be Europeans, great.
Well, and also you can give... I mean, the minor is where you can give 2 European spots and 2 China spots, and then 1 to the other regions. And if they completely suck, even with 2 teams there, and you end up with an SA team and a Southeast Asian team in the minor grand finals, then guess what? Europe's not as stacked as you thought it was.
Well, but it's also there's this pervasive fallacy in Dota. People want Dota to be like Counter-Strike, okay? Counter-Strike is very predictable. You generally know that Astralis or Liquid is probably going to win the freaking tournament, okay? Unless they meet in the quarterfinals of the damn playoffs and one of them knocks each other out. Anyway.
Not better.
Dota is not like that. Dota is not like that. You don't go into these tournaments knowing who's going to win. And people think that the top teams are much more favored to win than they are in the course of these LAN tournaments. And I don't see how you say. I mean, we talked all season long about how amazing Europe was, all season long, and then, lo and behold, the last place teams in both groups at TI were EU teams. This is exactly the same thing. It's like last year, an open qualifier team wins TI8, and we say, oh, okay, that's great. We're going to cut the number of teams coming out of regional qualifiers who qualify. What? This year, we're saying, oh, the region that we said all year long was so much better than everybody else. There's so many amazing teams. It should just be the EU Invitational, and the bottom 2 teams in each group are EU. And now it's like, oh, well, we know best how to allocate slots.
The depth, I don't think there's the depth in EU that people think there is. The problem is just that you have Secret and Liquid and OG.
The problem is we don't. I don't.
Well, okay, yeah, we don't know.
I don't know. The problem is people act like we know a lot more about Dota than we do. Okay, like Chaos coming into that tournament, we're done. They were just done. VP coming into that tournament, they were just done with each other.
Yeah,
they don't want to play together anymore. And it's not, you don't know these things. And you can't know these things. And that's why I want more of it to be decided on the field of play.
Mm-hmm. Like in a minor, where it's an actual LAN.
Less decided by people in some room.
Or the previous major,
What do we think? Who do we think is better?
Previous major works for me.
What do you want the previous major to do? Oh, just have the winners be invited?
Yeah.
Like I
like the old system when there's like 4 teams invited, and I mean, again, we didn't have any information on what the invites were, but you could pretty much assume top 3, or I think it was actually 6 invites. It was always top 3, and then it was like 3 more out of the top 8, because sometimes they just picked teams that didn't do as well because they did well at the previous one or something.
Well, they also pick teams like Fallout Gaming picking TNC. They pick teams for personal interest too.
Well, here's the other thing, by the way. When I tweeted this the other day, I get a lot of people telling me, "Oh, well, you can't give the next you can't give invites to the next major to the team that wins the previous." That would be like giving OG an auto invite to TI. That is the dumbest Twitter reply I've seen in like several months, guys.
Gee, it's like Newbie got invited to TI for no reason for TI5.
The qualifiers, the next major qualifiers are like a week or two later than the major. Okay, you think the team that just won the majors just all of a sudden sucks in the next 2 weeks? Like,
I mean, they might
God
because
forbid,
they're tired
last
and
year
jet lagged.
it was the next day.
yeah.
So yeah, you definitely had tired and jet lagged players.
Well, I just don't. You're not. But yeah, exactly. If
2
they
weeks
suck,
later,
it's
they're just gonna
not
win.
because they're demotivated or bad. It's not because they're all just taking time off and playing MMOs. All right.
Well, now it might be.
Yeah,
Well,
I was just
okay,
saying,
WoW
Classic
Classic.
out right now. That's actually kind of possible.
Yeah, like if WoW Classic had been released like right after TI4, nobody would have just disbanded the next day, right? It's like, no,
possible.
we're out, dude. We're buying our mounts. We're done.
Okay, so but quals, that actually has been another topic of discussion, different from what we're talking about. But it was a little interesting to see what happened with Midas mode and qualifiers being announced, then qualifiers being moved. And now, so the interesting thing is that now Valve states that they couldn't have the qualifiers later because of another LAN event that has since then been canceled.
Yes.
However, I've heard from a few people who are rather experienced with visas that typically you want like 30 days or so. And now, let's say I wrote it down. These qualifiers end on the 10th and the minor starts on the 7th. So you have less than a month to try and get everybody visas for the minor.
You can do it.
Maybe.
I mean, yeah. Visas,
can a player run org do it?
Ooh,
visas
sounds
are
hard.
always going to be a problem. And obviously, I think as long as it's 4 weeks or somewhere close, I don't know that 5 weeks is going to be. I think most of the teams that are going to have problems in 4 weeks would have problems in 5 weeks too. This is not. There's no magical solution to the.
It's also obviously down to the country, the org doing it. Like, there's a lot of orgs with like streamlined processes through their own governments where they just like have a connection and they're just like, hey, we have this issue with a player from such and such. Like, can you help us?
And that's the thing you wonder, like, how do these countries get chosen is the other question. Like are we going to have a repeat where we're having a tournament held in Malaysia that literally just doesn't, you have a player playing on a major team that just is not going to be able to participate.
Well, his country doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Well, and the other question that you kind of have to, we don't even know. I mean, obviously, we have no idea where these tournaments are.
And the distressing thing is like
2 months.
We saw this, right? This issue with NIP and Peter last year at the KL Major is that they don't either. And Peter's point, which I very much agreed with at the time, was that look, we all are making decisions about who's going to be on our team to give us the best chance to win. And if I know that the first major of the season, my first opportunity to earn DPC points of the season is in a place where this particular player is absolutely not going to play, that information it's something I want to know about.
Relevant. At the very least, you could have an OG type situation where No-Tail gets sick, so Sox just steps in. And
look,
and they could have practiced that, right? Like, well, yeah, no. So that's but imagine you are headed into an event and you know that this player's not going to be able to go, or you're building a team and you know that the first major, the player you really want to play with, won't be able to be a part of that. Well, so maybe you
find a sub.
Yeah, maybe you work something out where that player steps back as a coach for a month or two, which honestly I think gives players really important perspectives and gives them better understanding of team dynamics.
That's kind of what Alliance ended up having.
In the interest of this show being less than 2 hours, can we talk a little bit about the other big issue to me that was highly problematic this last season and did not get addressed at all, was the roster rules. Okay, Zach, where do you stand on the point system in terms of individual players versus teams? So to give, again, we've done this before, to give people a brief history, we had the roster lock system with the Valve Majors circa 2016. Everybody hated it because you spent the last 4 months of the season locked to the same team. Okay. Mm-hmm. We went from that to a player-based point system where points accrued to individual players, and there was this worry. I don't think it was ever
a team.
Yeah, no, there was
this
worry about. Yeah, there was this worry about somebody buying their way into TI by just buying players. Okay, I actually think that was incredibly far-fetched, but it was the worry. Okay, now though you have a situation where the multi-million-dollar prince of oil country buys the team and kicks a player so that his son can be on a TI team. It's this idea that points accrue to 5-man rosters and not players is ridiculous to me.
Well, it's not even 5-man rosters; it's orgs, right?
Yeah.
It is 5-man rosters. It's not. It's a. Okay. What happens is you register at the beginning of the season as a 5-man roster, and that entity. That's the thing. It doesn't have to be associated with an org. It can be you and me and 3 other guys. We register. And that entity, that shell company, if you will, okay, that's who gets the DPC points. And I mean, there is.
But what if the same 5 players? What if their contract gets dropped?
That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's saying. What he said earlier too. Valve will take the players over the org. So say Liquid stayed with Liquid for 2 months, they win a major, and then they decide to leave. The points will stay with the players, even though the name is under.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. That identity, regardless of the affiliation between that roster and any org, that roster, that entity that gets created in the system at the very beginning of the season is who points, or halfway through the season, as the case may be, is who points accrue to. Now, the problem with that is that for the last couple of years, we talked about the dead points. Well, part of the issue is Secret, VP, others could have dropped 3 of their 5 players and kept their spots at TI. So let's talk about that first. And let's talk about the idea that what you've got now is you're going to have these teams that disband, but they're like, oh no, we've got DPC points. So I'm on a team. We somehow win everybody else's power goes out. Okay. And so we win a spot at a major, and I've got DPC points. Okay. The other 4 players on the team rationally say, we don't want to play with this idiot anymore, but I'm clever. I've got some contract. I made them sign a contract, and this is my team. So I kick the 4 of them. And then I go and I get my 4 best friends.
Well, but that's what
I don't know.
That's what I was asking, because in that case, if Valve's siding with the players, then Valve would be like, nah, man, those 4 of them are
I think
more.
If our previous example goes the way it did, you can't do that.
But
it would be
not written down anywhere.
Yeah,
that's my issue. And here's the thing: my example is deliberately stupid. Okay, because realistically, what happens is we drop a player, and then we drop another player, and then we drop another, and all of a sudden it's 2 players at the end of the season, and it's like, wait a minute, who's got the points? If each of us goes and if each of those 2 players goes and forms their own team. It's just, and last year it wasn't so much of an issue because you weren't getting DPC points for qualifiers and you weren't basing qualifier invites based on DPC points. But this year, that arbitrariness, to me anyway,
there could definitely be
even stranger.
Some drama around who gets invited to next TI qualifiers, right? Regionally, you're gonna have people with 30 points just to get the invite,
right?
And and eventually, especially in tier 2, tier 3 Dota, you're gonna play with 9 different people on a team. So I have no idea. I have no clue.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but I don't know how you fix that either.
I do, but
yes.
Well,
want to talk about it later?
Yeah. The whole idea of I just, again, I understand why they did it because they don't want drama anymore about who's getting invited, but tying it to DPC points to me is not the right solution. It's not going to help the tier 2 scene at all. There is in fact nothing that was the only thing sorry, the only thing that was done that could possibly help the tier 2 scene is some of the major and minor prize pool allocations got a little bit shallower, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But again, it is a fifth order effect compared to TI is still way too much of the total season prize pool, and the TI prize allocation is still way, way too steep. No reason that the championship team needs to take home 45%. No reason that the top 4 teams need to take home 75%.
What do you mean? They got to win more than Fortnite?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
because that's more important than having. That's more important than supporting the next generation of players who want to be able to pay rent and get better at Dota. But
well, it's funny because that's touted as, our advertising policy. The size of the prize pool and the size that people win is headlines. But you could spend a fraction of that money on actual advertising and it would be significantly more effective.
No, see, the big problem is, and I guess I'll be the first to preach doom and gloom here. We got bailed out because TI9 was in China.
Yep.
Because a lot of the compendium whales are from China, and I sold 2,000 signatures this year. Are you serious? Like 2,000 people actually bought my. I love you all. You're wonderful. But everybody, all of the talent were sitting in the talent room going. Obviously, Shiva and Toby always sell a ton of signatures every year, but the rest of us are kind of, hey, what's this going on? So here, right? What happens when the prize pool for TI10 is smaller?
Which it will be. Unless, and I honestly suspect they did this for TI8 because it was not going to break it.
Yeah, you release an extra trove, Valve
just dumps their own money in and fakes it.
Well, okay. I'm not quite ready to go on the tinfoil hat crusade yet. But
I don't think that's that tinfoil. I think that's their advertising strategy, and if it's close,
it would be mine. I mean, if
it's close, you can make that tinfoil.
Yeah. But when it was close at TI8,
if you're 10 million behind,
the fact is, and I am very emphatic about this. At some point, the Dota 2 scene is going to have to start becoming about something other than TI. Because TI is not always going to be $35 million. And if we can't find a way to make the Dota 2 system about something other than TI...
Even if it goes back to 10, it's still all about TI.
Yeah.
No.
If you go to TI at 10 million, you're still, in the clear for the year.
I think
from a player standpoint, it's still just make TI or.
Well, I think that mentality. Yeah, I think that mentality for players is not changing anytime soon. But at least the raw economics of it is that I can make my living. If there are 5 $1 million tournaments and then a $10 million tournament, okay, maybe that allocation of resources isn't ideal, but at least on a relative basis. The income distribution, the income gap is not it's big, but it's not absolutely ridiculous. Right now, if you actually look at things like Gini coefficients, if you actually look at measures that economists use of income gap, the income gap in Dota in terms of prize pool payoffs across different teams and different players, it is the largest in esports statistically. Knoxville just published this, okay? And we also are of the big esports, we are also the big esport that has the least percentage of total compensation coming in the form of guaranteed player salaries. So this ecosystem is economically, it's in a terrible place right now. And I don't think any of these new DPC...
I'm not arguing with that.
Well, and from a sponsorship side too, I mean, you get deals signed for orgs just for TI. So orgs as well are hyper invested in their team making it to TI, and other tournaments really don't matter. Just doesn't, an org cannot make money off its team if it's not a TI team.
Even just the viewership numbers, having your team at TI is 30 majors. It's just It's the only thing you can really care about in Dota right now.
Yeah, and the logo placement and if the sponsor sends a team and gets content with the players or any social media interaction, any of that, it all comes down, it's TI focused. And that just makes, no matter how well you do all year long, say Alliance doesn't make TI. They're successful all year long, they're getting better.
And then they lose to Gambit.
Yeah, and they don't make it to TI. I guarantee that their sponsorship potential is significantly, unbelievably worse, even though, they did not place very well at TI. But their mere presence there says, hey, we'll probably be able to do this again next year, so you should sponsor us. And if they're not there, how the hell do they even hope to get sponsors for the upcoming year? And they're Alliance and they're respected, so they still do. But if you look at other orgs, that's a serious consideration as well from a sponsorship side, since TI is all that matters. That's all what people see.
Again, though, the big, just to kind of sum up, right? The big issue that I have with all of this is if you look at the DPC rules, it's fine.gif. It literally is, hey, yeah, do it again. Everything last year was fine. I am as upset right now as, and I'm trying not to rant and rave. I'm as upset right now as I've ever been with where we are in the direction that our scene is heading, because I think we have a lot of systemic problems and we're just not recognizing or addressing any of them.
I feel like...
Who do you think needs to do it, though? Do you think it's Valve?
Unfortunately,
or do you think the players need to get more involved?
Unfortunately, Valve is the only option, because
Is it, though?
Zach has a point, though.
Counter-Strike has, their own union at this point.
Yeah, and I do...
That Valve has to listen to. So there's the key there. This is Valve that has to do this, right?
They do listen to them, right? They don't have to.
Well, Valve listens to the players. PPD goes and tweets something, and then it gets fixed. Is the only way anything happens.
That's the thing, though. We see that and we say, oh, Valve listens to. Is that really the listening to the players that matters?
No, that's not the way it should be. So I agree with you that it's on Valve that they have to do something.
By the way,
I'm more just wondering, is there something outside of Valve, just changing what they are?
Yes.
Is there a way organizers, players, talent, everyone just comes together and fix this?
There
you don't think that's going to happen or could happen?
Oh, it's not going to happen. But
no, it's not. But
then the answer is no.
Yeah, but if they could make it happen, if players actually could organize and work together and actually commit to it, I think they could force. I think they could force Valve's hand.
No, people have been spinning this fantasy for years, and it's a fantasy. Okay, Counter-Strike is not Dota. Yeah. There are many more powerful entities in Counter-Strike outside of Valve. Orgs are much more prominent. TOs are much more prominent. They're not competing with a TI, okay? There are way more actors with power in the Counter-Strike scene than is the case in Dota. So a union there has a lot more people that they have pull with. They can go and they can advocate with StarLadder or whoever's hosting the next event. They can go and they can advocate with orgs for player contracts. They can, in Dota, the power comes from Valve, full stop. And Valve listens to the players because it suits them to do so.
Yes, what I'm saying is that if there was a more unified voice from the players, it could have more of an impact.
But again, all of these issues that we've been talking about for the last half dozen shows are because most of in fact, in many cases, all of the players with real power, all of the players that actually have Valve's ears are in the halves group. They're on teams that are already doing pretty well that maybe can afford to think about.
I think they're actually exclusively in the halves group.
Yes.
There's
I can't think of an example otherwise.
Has no voice.
That's why I said if the players. That was a big if. But I think if there is enough, I want to say visible power that Valve would make changes. if the players stepped in. The DPs, the major system, majors being implemented, I mean, a lot of that was player feedback. And then the way that the majors changed and everything, a lot of that was the have players having discussions with Valve and saying this system sucks, we don't like this, whatever it was. I mean, there were internal discussions from players on that.
And this is where that's gotten us.
Yeah, and if they were consistent, if they worked together, if they cared about Tier 2 Dota as much as they tweet that they care about Tier 2 Dota once a year, then yeah, something could be done. But that's asking a lot. And that's also, I think what that's really asking is you need one of the leaders, one of the recognized TI winning player.
I mean, they have to stop playing Dota.
Yes, they have to stop playing Dota, and they have to take charge. And it has to be someone.
They have to commit to fixing it.
Yeah, and it has to be someone that players trust and believe in. And let me tell you, the names that come to mind when I say respected Dota players are not the names that people are going to trust and believe in. So there's a problem there. Because
there's like 3 that overlap.
It's a smaller pool than what the general community would expect.
I would challenge you to name more than 5 names. I don't think
of people that
I'm not planning to.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I know you said 3, right?
Yeah.
So but again, it's this idea that players should union. A union has to have somebody to negotiate with. And like Valve right now with power dynamics the way they are in Dota, anybody that has any degree of power has it because Valve says they can have it, and in large part it can be taken away at any time. So what I mean, again,
I was just curious if it would work, if you could change anything at this point, or are we just like, well, this is how it is. This sucks, this sucks, this sucks, and we'll wait for next year.
I always think that you can do something.
There's
always something.
You definitely can do something, but the problem is there were a lot of different people that talked about, okay, here's how we want to see. Like, you guys can tell, I'm just frustrated right now because there are a lot of people that thought a lot about, Toby's tweeted a lot recently about, how I wish people would propose solutions instead of just bitching about problems. Fine. There were a lot of us. There are a lot of people that thought a lot and that talked about different solutions and different tweaks both last year and the season before that you can make to the DPC system without completely overhauling it that would fix some of the issues. And none of those changes have been made except for moving the damn consolidating the damn qualifier.
And slight prize pool distribution.
Yep.
Slight.
Like, it's just...
Well, they didn't give prize pool the qualifiers, right?
No.
Nope.
They still haven't done that.
I think that's the biggest one.
Yes, that would be a significant assist rather than qualifying points. Money would be super helpful.
Yeah, I mean the U.S. Open does it.
Is what payoff of rank in ladder?
No, in the French Open and the U.S. Open. I don't know about Wimbledon. I didn't check, but I know in the French Open and the U.S. Open this year, I think. Maybe not for the first time, but it's relatively recent that people that lost in the upper rounds of the qualifier matches got paid. I mean, and not in considerable sums either. A couple $1,000s. Like first round losers at the majors are now making. I think at the French it was like €40,000. At the U.S. it was like $50,000. I mean, it's people have recognized in tennis at least they've recognized that. The teams that are struggling, the players that are struggling to make their living on the fringes of the pro, they're the ones that the sponsorships.
There's actually a documentary, or it's not really a documentary. It's like one of those Sports Center focused shows. I don't even think it was Sports
30
Center.
for 30 or whatever.
It was something like that, but it wasn't even Sports Center. It was just some fucking random video I found because I got into tennis recently, and it's about like the rank 157 player.
Yeah.
And how he has to he's essentially old esports where he has to pay for all his own travel, bring all his own shit, pay to participate at the event, and hopefully at the end of the day go even and go up in rank a little bit. So he can break into the top 100 and actually play at tournaments. But at the same time, this dude's playing like 26 tournaments a year. And all the people in like the top 20 play like 12.
Right.
And have all the support staff and everything.
And that's, but again, and that's why in the last couple of years, the ATP has at least said, look, we know we've got these issues. We're not going to fix them all at once, but we can at least do things like pay these players that are paying their own way to the event, and we're going to pay them if they lose the very last match that they would have needed to win to get in the main event draw. We're at least going to make sure that their hotel bills and airfare are paid for. Like that's the kind of shit that we need to be thinking. Like DPC points are not fixing things. We need to be thinking about money in Dota, and we need to be thinking about how much of the total money that there is available is going to top teams versus the teams that are actually having to grind. And I'll take that back, because obviously these top teams are grinding as well. Everybody is. It's a meat grinder of an industry, but it really is about simple math.
And you need that development, right? Nisha would not be the player he is if he didn't have Kinguin to develop on and then to be visible, to be picked up by Secret.
No.
What I would rather see from Dendi than starting his own org would be starting an in-house or some kind of league or something.
You don't know what
like
the org is going to do technically.
Right. But that's
specifically with Dendi, like Liquid's thing is like the team is making an org, right? That has all kinds of issues for like the equity you have in the team and all that. Dendi at least is like kind of the face of Dota in CIS, so he can just like get a support staff and it's him.
Yeah.
And by the way,
don't have to worry about immediate teammates yet. So
CIS is one of the regions that's relatively healthy when you think about all this. Like they are, like Windstrike's players were actually getting a decent living wage.
Yeah.
For example, like there were more CIS. We had Vlad on in the last show before TI, and there are more CIS teams that were earning stable guaranteed monthly income than there were EU teams. Which is, again, it's just to me. Somebody needs to think about economic stability, and it's just not being done right now.
Well, and when Zach said, is there anything that could be done? That's where I was kind of heading with that, is imagine if Dendi put together some kind of global, and you can kind of leave China out because they do a really good job with their leagues and their tier 2. I mean, it'd be great if you include them, but like China has a lot more infrastructure
there.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the thing. There is some infrastructure.
So imagine if Dendi created something or became the face, he doesn't have to do all the work, but became the face of some kind of high tier in-house public scrim, something that's essentially a league that the tier 1 teams aren't playing in. But maybe they're occasionally casting it. Maybe they hop on and do an interview. Maybe they do something every once in a while that increases viewership and interest, and then supports queuing with an in-house league for high. Like you imagine if a face like Dendi created something like that. Like that's what Zach was asking about.
Different ways that this could happen, but the bottom line is that there needs to be some entity that has negotiating pull with Valve that is advocating for the not top 5 teams. That's what needs to happen. And I just, if that's the way it happens, great. But right now there is no entity outside of Valve that is actually advocating for players that are not regularly finishing in the top 4 to 6 of majors. And it needs to change yesterday.
And then we have less TI winners. We didn't get 5 new TI winners. Well, yeah. I mean, that's the hard question. The way I see it is, you're right, players have to retire. And they have to be selfless.
They don't just have to retire. They have to stay, except not play anymore.
Well, yeah, I retire from playing and then be selfless.
Right.
Enough to put together something like this. Or honestly, you don't even have to stop playing, because it can just be your face. You can hire someone. PPD could have been an amazing EG CEO if he just hired a CEO and handed him his Twitter password. Right? All you need is the face, because that's what people care about in Dota. Did you win TI? Cool, we'll listen to you. You don't even have to stop playing. You don't have to do anything. It doesn't even have to be you. Give me the worst kept secret in the world, and millions of people will still have no idea.
But again, the problem, as we've hit on, we've hit on this several times already, and it bears emphasizing. The problem is that is a full-time job. The problem is that advocacy is a full-time job, probably for more than one person. And who's going to invest resources to make that happen? That's what I want to know. Because Valve is not making it easy. This is what it is.
Can China have pull with Valve?
Yes, China has a great. Well, China's weird. China has they do have a great deal of pull with Valve, but so
if the West and China get together, could something be done? Because, like you were saying, China has pretty good infrastructure for their tier 2, tier 3 scenes, so they don't really care as much.
Well,
issues.
That's part of the problem. Yeah, that's part of the problem too. And there's the tier 2, tier 3 scene in China has its own set of problems. There's a lot of corruption. There's,
China's the only place I think right now that like orgs run the rosters.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like in Dota,
that there are actual player transactions. Yeah.
China's like, we're just selling you this guy. They have farm teams. They have, I mean, that might just be where we have to go, though.
But yeah, it is. I mean, it doesn't, we don't have to go the full, like, unrestricted free agency model where players are being bought and sold at market. But that's the thing you need. There needs to be another layer. That's what orgs bring you, is they bring you another layer that's advocating for something other than the interests of a very small set of players. Like you have to have agents who are invested, whose incentives align with the health of the scene as a whole. And right now, there's nobody whose incentives align with the health of the scene as a whole that has enough resources, enough clout with Valve to actually push for some of these changes. And what I get upset about is there are certain rule changes that some of us just kind of quietly push for, because there's no one rule change that's going to create that. But there are certain changes that over time can facilitate it, can sort of push us in that direction. And those changes have not been made.
That might be the most frustrating thing about this year, is that only small changes were made. Every other year we've seen a large
Do you think there's no hope there's going to be big changes in the middle of the season?
I think that if Valve's hand is forced, they will. So what we saw, like with 2 teams going from the minors for Epicenter, I think that's because Epicenter announced team distribution without Valve approval, and Valve got pissed off and said, nope, you don't get to have an extra CIS slot. That's going to the minor now. So, and that was not a huge, but that was a small mid-season change where they were like, never mind, 2 people are qualifying from this minor. So if it makes sense and makes them look good.
And lets them get back at someone. Apparently.
Yeah.
But,
I honestly think that's
honestly, if you spin it like that, there's always hope, because if there's one thing that we've learned, like, Valve's going to do what the hell they please.
Yep.
And that, I don't know. I mean, because they can. And sometimes those decisions end up being very beneficial. And, I don't, that's the thing. I'm frustrated right now. And so I feel badly having shat on Valve, because TI9 was amazing. And, we do have
a lot of things right.
Yes. But, again, it is frustrating to see. I think that as a basis going forward, the 2017-2018 DPC was a much better foundation to build on than in 2018-2019.
That was the one where we were worried about people buying players to get to TI, right?
But
we were worried about
the one where every tournament
that was
was
where there
DPC,
were 21
though.
DPC events.
Yeah.
Okay. I think
that year.
I think the open market, that open market environment made a lot more sense in terms of the platform to iterate on than this just whole, we're the kingmakers, we say how many majors and minors there are and where they're going to be, and nothing else really matters. And that, anyway, we've gone on long enough. It's tough, right? I don't, it's not hopeless, but you always, I as an economist, I look at direction, I look at trend a lot. And this is the time this is one of the times that I've been most discouraged in terms of the trend, the direction I see the scene moving.
So we always end the episode with saying what we're paying attention to or looking forward, and I think we've covered what's going on right now. We didn't even touch on rosters, but that's fine because who even knows? But we all just sort of say the thing that we're going to pay the most attention to because it's probably what's going to pop up on the next episode. So for people listening, they know what we're interested in, what we're going to keep harping on. So I always start, since I spring this question on you guys, give you a moment to think. One of the things that we didn't talk about that I have been a large proponent for a couple of years and continually I'm going to try and draw light to are the payment issues that we're seeing in Dota, whether it's orgs not paying, whether it's tournament organizers not paying their talent, not paying the teams. In the case of a DPC tournament with prize money that didn't get paid, that half of it was provided by Valve. I don't understand how that happens. I'm going to keep paying attention to that and keep talking about it because it flares up every 6 months and Reddit is outraged. How is this happening? Oh my gosh, we didn't know. And that's insane. It should constantly be something that is known so that new organizers in the scene know they will be held accountable. So that's what I'm going to be paying attention to and being very strict on.
Not started the Dota debt website now.
Yes,
my friend Knox.
Yeah, because I've been keeping track of so many. I tweeted out a bunch of them, and then Kezu was showing his, and Knoxville messaged me, and he was like, "Hey, I'm putting this together." He did all the work. I didn't do anything. He just took what was on my tweets and all my links to stuff that I had been following. He did all the work. But I loved it because as I was writing that tweet and going through my own personal records, I was like, man, I wish there was a database for this. And I love that project. And will be heavily vocal about it for as long as it needs to be.
Just get it on the subreddit sidebar.
That actually is a really good idea.
It should be. It should be.
I'm writing that down, and I'm messaging Ahmad about it.
Well, Alan, what do you got for me, Alan?
I'll take the obvious one here, man. LGD Ame fan hype. I want to know what is going on with these rosters, baby. I think that again, my sense is that Liquid moving to a player-run org will be the first of several. Interested, obviously, in what Dendy's going to do. But you know what? Honestly, at the end of the day, I'm tired of talking about economics. I just want to think about some Dota. I want to think about what the first major is going to look like. I want to know what team Fail is going to be playing patch on. Amen. No, I'm seriously hyped to see the new rosters and to start breaking down what the new competitive landscape is going to be like, because I know that there are a lot of people that are now saying, oh, well, you know, OG won 2 years in a row. The rest of the season clearly doesn't matter. It's just all about TI. I don't buy that. I think it's false. I think we are going to have a great competitive season once again.
All right, Zach, what are you watching besides tennis?
I want to figure out what they do with the MMR system, because again, right now, you know, it's in that experimental phase. It's kind of a disaster for people at higher MMR, especially if you're a core player. Like, I just queue 5, so I still get games in like 10 minutes. It works, but if you play core, you can only play as a 5-man, and that's just shit. So other than that, it's the same thing as Alan. You know, I want to see the rosters. I know. I want to see what roster my man is on. I know a little bit about it, but you know, it's still going to be interesting to see where everyone ends up, because I've heard of players being on like 4 different teams all the time.
I wonder. There's been a couple teams that were announced that I bet don't still exist.
We'll see.
I don't know about that. Maybe if it's like an official announcement.
I got one in mind that I bet doesn't exist anymore, but I can't remember if it was officially announced or not, so I'm not going to say it. Okay, so I think we've reached a good point here. So I will be constantly harping on payment issues. Alan's going to look at rosters, and Zach's going to hope that he gets a game at any point in the future. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Rivalry Cooldown. As always, if you enjoyed it, please share so that other people can hear all these rants about Valve and maybe cause enough uproar that things change, but also just to stay informed. And if you are listening on podcast sites, just know that reviews help us out a ton on new people finding the podcast. So we really appreciate if you take the time to like, comment, subscribe, all those lovely things. We'll see you guys on the next episode.
Really a bullshit, and then you bust by season 2 because you spent it on the tats. I got a cupboard full of this shit.
You've got a tournament organizer that has not met its obligations and continues to not and makes no plans to. Don't let them use your game again.